Continuing on with section 1.1 and actually getting into section 1.2 here, we'll look at a little bit at adding and subtracting whole numbers. When adding two numbers like this, it is entirely possible to do these things by hand. You know, we have 2368, and we add it to 744. If we're doing these things by hand, we have to make sure we line up the left hand or the right hand, the rightmost digit. Then we can add them together. 8 plus 4 is 12, and so on. We could go through this process. But I don't really expect you guys to do these things by hand. Instead, you're allowed to use a calculator. You're allowed to use your computer, and your computer has a calculator on it. So if you want to use the calculator that's built into Windows, or if you're using Linux, or Mac or whatever, you want to use the built-in calculator, that would be fine. I actually recommend getting a separate calculator just because it's a lot easier to not have to move things around, move the windows around. The calculator that you get for this class doesn't need to be very advanced though, so just basically one of those scientific calculators. That's all I would really say. Just make sure it has, if you're buying a calculator specifically for this class, it should have some of these trigonometric ratio buttons. Cosine, sine, and tangent. That's what these stand for. Cos, sin, and tan. So just make sure it has those on it. I have some. I talk about this a little bit in the syllabus. So if you're looking for a specific calculator that costs, I think it costs about $20 or maybe 30. I do have some links in, or some descriptions in the syllabus. So in any case, if we're doing this on the calculator, it's as simple as typing 2368 because it's 2368, hitting the plus key, and then 744, hitting enter, and you can see we get the same thing here. When you're dealing with multiple numbers, so in this next example we're adding 3 different numbers together. If you have a scientific calculator, your scientific calculator should be able to do this just fine. So we'll do 1473 plus 536 plus 875. You can just type it all in together like that. There's no reason to do this in multiple calculations. And in general, if you can allow your calculator to do more of the work for you, I recommend you do that. So let's go ahead and give this answer 2884. Oops. All right, the same thing goes with subtraction, except with subtraction, well, you'll notice, actually, let me talk, whatever. It's the same thing with subtraction. We'll just do 84 minus 31. I hit enter, and I get 53. Or whatever. These numbers are small enough where I just kind of want to do that in my head. Don't feel the necessity. If it's a simple enough problem, don't feel like you always have to go over to your calculator. If I'm asking 2 times 3, just write down 6. Don't feel like you have to always go to your calculator. Now, one thing I do want to point out is that when you're dealing with subtraction, if you have 13 minus 7, this is 6. But if we were to do 7 minus 13, this is not the same thing. This is not 6. I can actually just ask my calculator that to demonstrate this. So 7 minus 13, you can see actually gives us -6. This is not the same thing as 6, obviously. It's a different number. It's a negative number. We haven't talked about negative numbers in this class. We will get to them fairly quickly. But just for now, I just want to point out that when you have subtraction, you cannot swap the direction of these. You have to keep them in the same order. This is 13 minus 7. If I'm doing this by hand, it would be 13 minus 7 like this. You would never switch those two around. You would never write it as 7 minus 13 if you're doing 13 minus 7. Again, because that's just not the same thing. So just something to be careful with. And that's essentially all I really wanted to talk about for section 1.2. So let me just add that on there. That was section 1.2. That was a fast section.